Hi, I'm Linnea, and you are listening to the All-American Spook Show. It is so scary, you might not be able to sleep all night long. It's a scream.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/spookshow. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
See Santa Claus tonight? You better run, boy. You better run for your life.
But Mother Superior, it's Santa Claus.
Now I have another reason to hate Christmas.
Now that hell is full, I wonder where you will go.
The caller is in the house. The calls are coming from the house.
You're my family now.
But if you're bad boys and girls, your name goes in the bad boys and girls book, and I'll bring you something horrible.
Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus.
The All-American Spook Show podcast.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the All-American Spook Show Horror Podcast. I'm Josh and I'm joined here with Professor Smoke.
What's up?
Will and Donnie both had some holiday assignments to go out and do this week, so they are not going to be joining us here, but we're going to be kicking off the month of December and all of our holiday horror spectacularness with Silent Night, Deadly Night from 1984. Now we're going to be getting to the one that the Patreon poll was for back in the month of November. We're going to be getting to that in 2 weeks. So 2 weeks from the release of this episode, you'll get that one, and that will be episode 87, which comes out on December 20th. So just want to give you the heads up. This isn't the one that the patrons voted for in the month of November for December. That will be coming up in 2 weeks. So we decided to do this one. Probably one of the better, more favorite, I should say, Silent Night or Christmas horror movies. In Silent Night, Deadly Night, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely one of the fan favorites, too,
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
you'd say.
I think you would look, I think if you just looked up top 10 best Christmas horror movies on Google, I'd be shocked if this doesn't pop up on just about every list you see. It's going to be somewhere. If it ain't number one, it's on that top 10 somewhere, right?
Yep. And it is just, it's a fun slasher movie, plus the fact of the whole history of the controversy of the movie. I think that also plays a big part on why it's also at the top of people's Christmas horror lists and things too, just especially for the people that remember it when it came out back then. The whole hullabaloo that we'll get into about it.
Yeah, we'll get into all that here shortly. We actually even have a clip, which I thought was kind of cool. I mean, it's only about 2.5 minutes long, so I figured it was worth playing. It's basically Siskel and Ebert. Let's call it as it is. They're just taking a big dump on this movie for 2.5 minutes. But since it's fairly brief, I figured we'd play that a little bit later on and let you hear it. So we'll get to that. But before, I guess we'll get into the initial reactions and all that stuff. And before we get to the trailer, I'll go ahead and toss the usual information. If you wanted to email us, contact us, message us, tell Will to fuck himself, whatever, you can do that at allamericanspookshow@gmail.com. Of course, you can always DM us on Twitter, message us, and just follow us, everything we do there on Twitter at AA Spookshow. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, the Slasher app by searching for All American Spook Show. Same deal over on YouTube. We have our YouTube channel where every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. East, we go live with Deadline Horror News where, we talk about the latest goings-ons in horror, the latest headlines and other horror anniversary dates and box office numbers, all that stuff we go through every week live on YouTube every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. East. On our Patreon, which is patreon.com/AASpookShow. Every Tuesday we have a new video minisode where the main attraction there is the Library of the Professor, where Smoke finds something from his vast library that you see in the videos behind him, whenever you're watching our videos. He'll pick something off the shelf, movies, books, masks, whatever he wants to talk about back there, and then we rate it, talk about it, whatever. It's always a good time. Those come out every Tuesday over on Patreon, and like I said, that's patreon.com/AASpookShow. We have our TeePublic page where you can get logoed merchandise, other cool designs. You should be able to find that once again by searching for All American Spook Show over on TeePublic. All these things that I just mentioned should be down in the show notes. We have a link tree link there. You click on that and you should see all the links to all our various things, the YouTube page, the TeePublic, Patreon, all the other places to find the podcast. Of course, like we always try to remind you, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, which our numbers show that a great deal of our listeners listen to us, go down there and rate us 5 stars, and leave some comments. It helps out the cause. It helps spread the eyeballs and the ears that get to listen to this. So the more ratings we get, the more people that, it gets spread to more people. So we would much appreciate if you go give us a 5-star review over there. That would be massively helpful. And of course, I'm trying to get better about also reminding you of this before we dive into anything. We are a spoiler-filled podcast. Like, we dive deep into the movie, and we're going to spoil it for you. So if for whatever reason, at this point, you haven't seen Silent Night, Deadly Night from 1984, pause this, go check it out. Now, admittedly, this one's a little bit harder to track down. Like, you can rent it on YouTube and a couple other places. But, like, as far as I could see, there's no streaming home for this movie. So it's a little bit, harder to track down if you don't want to go buy the Blu-ray or whatever, which honestly I would suggest, for this or any movie we talk about, go track down, find the, the best Blu-ray versions you can find. That's always the best way. But if you're only interested in doing streaming, the only place I could find it was like, for rent on YouTube. So there are options, just a little more limited than usual. No streaming home. So, but yeah, pause this, go watch the movie. It's only, about an hour 20 something, give or take which version you're watching, right? And then come back and listen to the rest of us and, hear us talk about it and give our ratings and all that. So yeah, so with all that out of the way, I'll go ahead and toss to the trailer for Silent Night, Deadly Night from 1984.
Was the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. You've made it through Halloween. Now try and survive Christmas. Silent Night, Deadly Night.
All right, so there's the trailer for that. So I guess we'll go ahead and get, since there's only the two of us here, we'll go ahead and get into your history with the movie and your initial reactions and how you felt about it now and everything. Of course, we'll give our star ratings later, but just what's your early take on it?
Well, first of all, let's start, since we just saw or listened to the trailer, let's start there, because that's, I remember that commercial when it came on, and I was only, we're talking about 1984. I was 11 years old when this movie came out in 84. And I remember that trailer with I specifically remember the Santa Claus hands, the Santa suit. You don't see his face, you see the axe in the frame and everything. And that was the trailer that sparked off all the stuff that we'll get into as far as the controversy of it. And I'm pretty sure it aired, I can't remember what football game. It first aired in some football game that was, I can't remember what teams were playing, whatever the case may be. And it just they got inundated with shit from parents, basically, outraged at it. But yeah, I definitely remember that trailer. Now, I didn't see it in the theater at that time because, again, as we'll get into, that was a limited run when it came out, and it did not play in the city I was in. Not that I would have been able to go see it anyway. My parents weren't. I would have gone to see it if I could. I wasn't like, I guess I was the kid that the parents were worried about. Like, they were all up in arms about the, kid, just that trailer itself, not to mention the movie. I don't know what parents are going to take the kids. They're, young, impressionable kids to see Silent Night, Deadly Night back then. But whatever the case, my parents wouldn't have taken me to see that at 11 years old, so I wasn't going to have to wait until it came out on video, which it did eventually a few years later. I can't remember exactly what year the VHS came out. I want to say it was at least past 85, maybe in 86. Renting that movie was the first time I saw it. And it was in a big box VHS with that poster art with like the Santa Claus's arm holding the axe with the chimney, like he's going down the chimney with the axe.
Yeah.
And another promotional poster that pissed off the parents, I guess. Seeing that, because I think that poster did get plastered up on like some billboards and things in big cities, like probably in New York and California, if I had to guess. So yeah, I saw it on VHS. That that big box stuck out with a big Santa Claus. I already knew about it because of the trailer. I just didn't know how long it was going to take before it got the video.
Yeah, the information I found on that was the movie was originally released on VHS in 1986 through USA Home Video, and then in 1987, the film was re-released on VHS by International Video Entertainment.
Yeah, now I have that International Video on VHS still, and I think that's the uncut version. I can't remember if that big box, the one that came out in USA, might have been the theatrical cut, which again we'll get into all this a little bit as we get into the episode a little further. Was R-rated, I believe that initial release was probably. That's how I saw it. Was that first one, that first big box USA video release thing? Yeah, and I thought it was a little bit a few years later, which it was 1986. By that time, I was fully inundated with horror. That was like 85 and going into 86. That was the time that I went from just being somebody who liked horror movies a lot to buying Fangoria magazine and whatnot. So I definitely was very well aware of this movie when it hit VHS. It was an awesome slasher movie. I was very much into slashers. Halloween, Friday the 13th, and holiday slasher movies were right up my alley. And this one, upon first watching it, definitely delivered. And that was in that R-rated version. It took a little while longer again before that. I think the IVE released that unrated version, which has a little bit more stuff as far as in the gore department. But yeah, that first initial viewing was like, wow, this is and you can see what pissed off parents.
Yeah.
I mean, their thing I think was that it was. They were thinking the way it was marketed that it was going to be actually Santa Claus killing people.
Yeah. Even though the name of the fucking movie is Silent Night, Deadly Night, that should be right there. That should be your first cue, right? Why would you be fooled into thinking it's anything other than that? What the hell?
What's that? Oh, you mean other than?
Yeah, I mean if you just saw the name of the movie, Silent Night, Deadly Night, why would you think it's something family friendly? Even if you saw nothing, you saw no images, you saw no Santa, anything. Yeah. If it's called that, it's not a family movie. What kind of family movie?
I don't know how they get that part from. I don't even know how they would think anybody would be tricked into taking their kids to see this too. I mean, it's R-rated. It's on the posters, in the theater. It's an R-rated movie, and I don't think you're going to accidentally take your kids to see it. Now, the people that knew what it was, knew that it was an R-rated movie, and I mean that. Well, again, we'll get into all this once we get to that part of it. But yeah, it's just a bit ridiculous when you think about all that. And that it would probably not, well, that definitely wouldn't happen today. People are not as uptight about that type of stuff now as they were then. It plays into that whole mindset of the satanic panic when it came to heavy metal and Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. Just a lot of things set parents off back then. I think more so than now. I don't know if that has to do with a loosening of whatever, or just all that led to you got video game stuff and all. It's just so much more stuff out there that for parents to worry about than movies or music or whatever.
Yeah, especially now. I dare say, it's probably not as popular to watch movies as much as it used to be, just with kids in general. When we were kids, that was one of the things you wanted to do. You wanted to go to a movie theater and watch a movie. You wanted to go to Blockbuster or your local mom and pop and rent a movie every weekend. That was just part of what we did growing up. But growing up in the 80s and 90s and all that.
Yeah.
But now I think it's the way entertainment is consumed has changed that mentality with a lot of kids. And I just look at it from my kid's perspective. My daughter's only 3, so she doesn't know what's up and down, right? But my son, he's 10. Unless I make him sit down and watch a movie, he doesn't go seek out movies.
Yeah.
And when I was 10, that's all I did, man. I know every kid's different, but you get my point. Times are different now. They don't seek it out. They don't care about it so much. So I think that mentality. I think there's still people there oh, I don't want my kids to see stuff like that. And I agree to an extent. I'm not going to let. I think it's just up to the kid, right? As far as do you think your kid is mature enough to handle this without traumatizing him or turning him into a serial killer or something like that. That's a parent's decision, period. But, yeah, I mean, and that naturally leads us into what we're talking about here with the controversy of this movie. And like you said, a lot of that, from what I could tell, came from the advertising campaign. The one thing I found here, it says particularly in its posters and TV spots that made significant emphasis on a killer being dressed as Santa Claus. So, I mean, you can see where people would be like, oh, what the hell? You know, like, but like I said, I mean, all you would need, in my opinion, all I would need to see as a parent, and my kid says, hey, I want to go see this movie. Well, what do you want to see? Silent Night, Deadly Night? No. I don't need to see a trailer. I don't need to see anything. You want to go see Silent Night, Deadly Night? I think I need to screen this first, you know. I'm not just going to, like, all right, well, here's 2 tickets. Go, you and your friend Buddy, have fun, you know. Like, what kind of parenting is going on here, you know? But whatever, right? It was the 80s, so I guess, you know, maybe there were a lot more kids sneaking into movies and stuff, and, you know, the old trick of buying like a ticket to see, you know, whatever latest Disney cartoon is out, and then sneaking in to see Silent Night, Deadly Night. But, you know, that doesn't, to me, that doesn't mean you should just like pull it out. You know, like, well, kids might see this, yank it out of the theaters, you know. because that's essentially what happened right after that, right? Like it says, like the PTA or whatever, they fought to have the movie removed from theaters, you know, due to the subject matter or whatever, and the fact that it was shown around Christmas. And it points out here, although an earlier film with a similar premise, Christmas Evil, had gone unnoticed. I can see why, but I mean, 4 years earlier, right?
Yep. And also, you better go back further than that, 1972, Tales from the Crypt, the British one.
Yeah.
It was based on the Tales from the Crypt comic. Had the
I remember that
same the Santa story that, you know, that the Tales from the Crypt TV series had later on. I forget what the name of that story was. This was one that was.
And I remember seeing both versions of that: the old '70s, you know, the anthology movie, and that early Tales from the Crypt episode, you know, in the late '80s, early '90s, whenever that came out. I remember seeing both of those when I was a kid, and both of them scared the shit out of me.
Yeah. And neither of those movies, both of those movies had people dressed as Santa killing people, and both of them had an act at one point or other in the movie. But no, there was no stink about it. The only reason I think that is because of directly related to that advertising campaign where they had the trailer that had the Santa-clad killer with an axe.
Plus
the other movies.
Plus, too, Christmas Evil. Let's face it, that probably just went unnoticed because nobody watched it. Let's be honest here. You know, like I remember when we talked about that. Like I don't even think that got a release, or if it did, it was a very small release.
Yeah, probably. Without looking it up, I would assume it probably ran on the drive-in circuit and the grindhouse and stuff like that.
So slightly
maybe it has some limited release in big cities or whatever.
Slightly different set of circumstances, slightly different time period. You know, 4 years doesn't seem like a long time, but you know things changed. You know. And and to the other point, both of those Tales from the Crypt, you know, the show and that movie, probably got to hide behind the veil of the fact that it was called Tales from the Crypt, and not, you know, Santa Claus is going to fucking kill you, you know. Like, if you didn't watch it, you didn't know it, right? So, and that, you know, the famous one with the Crypt Keeper and everything that everybody, you know, looks back and enjoys now, that was on HBO, so... You know, that's not like there was a bunch of kids around the TV watching HBO, you know, for this particular episode or anything like that. So, different set of circumstances. But yes, I see what you're saying. But it says TV advertisements which aired between episodes of family-friendly series such as Three's Company and Little House on the Prairie. You know, you said it was during a football game. I bet you back then that was probably like Monday Night Football because I don't think there were... You know, say in 1984, I don't know how many like nationally broadcast NFL games there were back then, or maybe college football or something like that. But I bet you it was Monday Night Football. Because,
probably was.
But apparently, large crowds of people formed at theaters, blah blah blah, and they protested it. At its East Coast premiere, it says at the Interborough Quad Theater in the Bronx, in New York, protesters picketed the theater and sang Christmas carols in protest. In response, TriStar Pictures, the film's original distributor, pulled all ads for the film 6 days after its release on November 15th, 1984. And I should add, this movie was released on November 9th, 1984. The movie itself was also withdrawn shortly thereafter due to the controversy. Due to the public outcry, producer Ira Barmack told People magazine, quote, "People have taken offense at Santa being used in a scary context. Santa Claus is not a religious figure. He's a mythic character. I didn't deliberately ride roughshod over that sensitivity. and I didn't anticipate the objection to it. So yeah, clearly you see, and this will naturally lead us into what Siskel and Ebert had to say about it. And I guess now's as good a time as any just to go ahead and play the clip. So like I said, this is about 2.5 minutes long, but here's the clip.
Not a creature was stirring all through the house. Not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse.
Our X-ray subject this week, the controversial Santa Claus killer movie, Silent Night, Deadly Night. Actually, there have been two controversies about Silent Night, Deadly Night. Even before the film was released a couple of weeks ago, its TV ad campaign caused a furor with its brief depiction of an axe-carrying Santa Claus. The distributor of this film, TriStar Pictures, which is co-owned by Columbia Pictures, CBS, and Home Box Office, pulled the commercial out of release after a week of protests by parents led by a Milwaukee group. Of course, commercials like that usually die out after a week anyway, so thanks a lot, fellas. But there's no question in my mind that the showing of Santa with an axe on free TV and commercials is sick and sleazy and mean-spirited. So let's repeat the names of the people who did it. TriStar Pictures, co-owned by Columbia Pictures, CBS, and Home Box Office. Shame on you. Now, as for the film, I've got news for you. It's worse than the TV ads. Telling a typical mad slasher story about a boy who witnesses his father being shot and his mother being stabbed to death by a maniac in a Santa Claus suit. So now the traumatized kid grows up and is asked to work in a toy store as Santa one Christmas, and it freaks him out. He impales one naked girl on a set of antlers, spears another woman with a bow and arrow, and another with a knife, and yes, we even see Santa give one little girl a bloody knife as a gift and threaten another little girl with physical punishment as she sits on his lap. You might think that it would be funny, Roger, or it's played as quite sick in the film. So let me repeat the names of the writer and director and producers of this film. Michael Hickey wrote the film, Charles E. Sellier Jr. directed it, and Ira Richard Barmack produced it. You people have nothing to be proud of, even if you made a few bucks off of all the negative publicity. Your profits truly are blood money. And Silent Night, Deadly Night now has the distinction of joining I Spit on Your Grave as one of the two most contemptible films I've seen. And I don't mean to think it's campy. It really is quite awful.
I'm glad you mentioned those people's names because quite frequently they think, gee, we'll make this exploitation film, we'll be able to buy our Mercedes and live in Bel Air and nobody will ever know what we did. But I would like to hear them explain to their children and their grandchildren that it's only a movie. Yeah. I think that would be a real interesting explanation.
So there you go. That's that's what Siskel and Ebert just roasted everyone involved.
Yeah, I love how they just call them out. They call them out by name, like the writer, the producer, the director. They can all go to hell. And
Fuck these.
That way, shame on them. Yeah.
Fuck these dudes. And here's their names: Charles L. Sellier, Michael Hickey. Yeah, I mean, these kind of movies to me, like you should know what to expect. Now, is it maybe marketed the wrong way? You know, maybe they probably should have put a little bit more thought into that, I guess.
It just kind of plays in with that whole thing with the marketing thing. There was an interview with, I can't remember the name of the actress that plays the head nun after we get in the story at the orphanage.
The Mother Superior?
Later on. Yeah, the Mother Superior. Mm-hmm. Whatever the actress's name was, there was an interview with her, and she was saying how that whole controversy probably would never have happened had they not marketed it the way they did with the promo that showed the guy with with the axe, the Santa killer, and everything, and then the posters that were plastered on billboards with the Santa coming out the chimney or going down the chimney rather, which is true. Yeah, if they had kind of maybe gone a different direction with that, I feel like that if they had not even shown that they had the trailer but didn't show the Santa killer with the axe, and maybe had that poster different for different markets. For the billboard they could have a different poster. Maybe for the theater, okay, they have that one, but if they marketed that way, more than likely they would have never had those parents out there protesting. They would probably, Siskel and Ebert would have torn it apart still, but who cares, Yeah. It wouldn't have protested the theaters, get it pulled out of the theaters,
I like that he throws this, he threw this in the movie, or this movie in the trash heap with I Spit on Your Grave. I think it's ironic that now, fast forward, like, that's probably one of our two favorite movies. I Spit on Your Grave and Silent Night.
You mentioned Maniac. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember if I'm pretty sure they probably tore Maniac up. The same kind of thing happened with the movie Maniac earlier.
Yeah.
Not with the Christmas thing. So Maniac does have a tie-in. Yeah. We talked about this somewhere.
Yeah, which we just.
I don't remember if it was online or if it was.
Yeah, we were just talking about that on. Oh gosh, no, I can't remember. It was either on the Holiday. No, we haven't gotten to that one yet on Holiday Horror. So it must have been on the the YouTube show or over on Patreon. Yeah.
Or we weren't even online. We were just chatting.
Who knows? Everything's a blur at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah.
At any rate, it does have a slight tie into Christmas, but not a Christmas Santa killer. But it did have a big stink about the mean-spiritedness of the killing and the slashers and the misogyny or whatever of that movie. Had a lot of people up in arms about it too. So
to me, that's the other thing about this one, because we'll get into that shortly once we get into the blow by blow and everything. But like, really, what's this movie about? It's about like, don't treat a kid for like a fucking piece of shit just for something he can't help, right? Like, they basically mentally tortured this kid into becoming like a psycho killer. Like, really, that's what it's about, right? Like, watch out for mental health, you know?
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of cheap thrill kills and everything in it throughout, that entertain us throughout the way. If that's the kind of thing you like, this is the kind of thing you'll really like, in this kind of movie. But I think ultimately the point of this movie is like, look, if you got some serious trauma in your life, you should get some good help and not trust some fucking, hard-headed, hell-bent nun to to fix some kid. I mean, she basically just beat on him and ignored him, and then it turned him into a fucking monster. In a lot of ways, that's what it's about.
I'm not even talking about what happened before that. Like you got Grandpa, crazy Grandpa, which again we'll get into the plot of the movie. You got crazy Grandpa telling some shit. You got the Santa Claus
right after that. His parents,
does what he does.
Yeah.
And
I mean, just
launches the whole thing. Fucks him up initially. Yeah. And then get to the Mother Superior.
Yeah. All this horrible things happen to you, and then and that's the other thing. She's well aware of it. Like, I'm aware of what's happened to him, but still, fuck this kid. Damn it. That's what it's more about. I think it's more about like in this movie at least, it's kind of like railing against orphanages, organized religion, and mental health, right? Like that's really kind of more at its core is what they're talking about here. But yeah, I mean, like it's an interesting case study, and like as far as like how a movie can get ostracized for for some reasoning that kind of some of it was self-inflicted and some of it not. But just to further the point, this movie came out November 9th, 1984. So I'll go through the top 10 box office and just show you how like they once again kind of shot themselves in the foot, but also kind of got drugged down for reasons that were probably, didn't need to happen. Number 10 that week, the same weekend, it opened up. This movie opened up as well. A Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one, made $1.2 million. Number 9, All of Me, whatever the hell that is, in its 8th week. But number 8, Silent Night, Deadly Night, with $1.4 million. So it made about $200,000, a little less than $200,000 more than A Nightmare on Elm Street did in its opening week. So you tell me during like Christmas time, this time of the season, this movie would have probably raked it in. And by the way, that was in only, now granted this was in more theaters than A Nightmare on Elm Street in its opening week. Nightmare on Elm Street only played in 165 theaters, and Silent Night Deadly Night was only in 398. But if this thing had went wide and let's just say it had doubled its theaters, God, I mean, like it's not hard to imagine this thing would have raked it in, right?
Oh no, yeah. Siskel and Ebert were dead wrong when they said that one thing on there about they were talking about how the protesters came out and within a week it got pulled, and they're like, usually these kind of movies die out within 2 weeks. Well, that might be the case for some slashers, but I guarantee you this one coming out at Christmas time with some of the initial, before the protest, with some of the initial controversy tied into it, I think that brought more people to the theater too. Yeah, I can easily see it making...
I don't think it would have been breaking records or anything like that, but I think it would have been safe to say this thing would have been a movie that made a lot of money, considering the budget that I could find was only estimated roughly about $750,000. So they damn near doubled their money, if not, right, like in 1 week. So yeah, this thing would have rolled.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, and it got released November 9th, and that's like, you got a full month.
Yeah.
2 months basically to Christmas.
Yeah, they could have easily got a month and a half, squeezing that juice during that time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was ingenious. I mean, it would have been if it hadn't been for the protest, or they could have just wrote it out and just said, "Fuck that, and we'll just play it anyway."
Yeah. Well,
I don't know. I
think they got
TriStar pussied out on it.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Like they got strong armed by some, pretty big groups. So they really had no choice in the end. But yeah, it is what it is. I'll finish the top 10 here just because it's always interesting to hear. Number 7 was Teachers. Number 6, Amadeus. Number 5, A Soldier's Story. Number 4, Places in the Heart. Number 3, in its opening weekend, No Small Affair. Number 2, The Terminator, the first one, and it was in its third week, still rolling. And number 1, Terminator had just got knocked down from number 1 to number 2 this week for the new opening, the new opening of the new film, Oh God, You Devil. George,
Oh God, You Devil pushed Terminator down, huh?
Yep, it pushed it down in its second, or no, Terminator was in its third week, so I guess it had been number 1 for 2 weeks, or at least 1 week, but 2 weeks, I believe. And then it got pushed out by George Burns. Oh God, You Devil.
The second sequel to, what's the first one called? Just Oh God?
Something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God, book 2. Oh God, You Devil.
Yeah. So, yeah, the power of George Burns was strong at this in 1984. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting that, history looks back at A Nightmare on Elm Street as like being one of the most successful, and it definitely is one of the more successful franchises of all time. But Silent Night, Deadly Night beat it out in its first week. That being said, as far as franchises are concerned, Silent Night, Deadly Night did go on to spurn a whole franchise within itself, too. So, like I said, November 9th, 1984, Silent Night, Deadly Night came out, and the whole controversy and blah, blah, blah. Then in 1987, April of 1987, for some reason, I guess they wanted to steer clear of fucking Christmas after the last debacle. April of 1987, Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2 came out. Then, and now all these are directed by different people, too, by the way. The second one was directed by Lee Harry. The first one, which we kind of mentioned briefly there earlier, was directed by Charles Sellier. Is that how you say it? Sellier. I think that's how you say it.
I see French, yeah. And if not, then it's Sellier, I guess. But.
We'll go with it. Charles Sellier Jr. The second one, much easier to pronounce, was directed by Lee Harry. Then in November of 1989, Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, Better Watch Out, was released, and that was directed by Monty Hellman. November 21st, 1990, Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, Initiation, and that was directed by Brian Usna. November 7th, 1991, Silent Night, Deadly Night 5, The Toy Maker, directed by Martin Kitrosser. And then the I guess you could say remake, reboot, however you want to frame it, in 2012, November 30th of 2012, Silent Night came out. Now, I believe the 4th and 5th one, before you get to that remake, whatever you want to label that one, I don't think the 4th and 5th one had anything to do with the original 3, right? Because I think the 2 and 3 actually kind of connected story-wise, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, well, Part 2 is pretty much the first movie retold for about half the movie.
Yeah.
Literally, I remember watching Part 2 and this is just the first movie. It's like flashback to his brother, flashbacking of the first movie for a good portion of that movie until that movie finally takes off. But yeah, it is linked at least. And then Part 3 is as well.
Yeah,
and then they kind of go off in totally different worlds with the other ones.
Now, I believe, once again, correct me if I'm wrong, I think those were direct-to-video as well. I know at least the third one was, that I can tell here. But I think the second one might have been. I'm not sure if it got a release or not. It might have been in theaters in April of 1987. But the third one, Better Watch Out, that was a direct-to-video release. And that was a sequel to that, so they're connected. I'm pretty sure 4 and 5, though, and then that remake, not connected. But either way, it spawned anytime you get a movie that's going to spawn 5 more movies, that's fairly successful in its own right. And because of the circumstance and, the years that have passed and everything like that, this movie has become a cult classic, right? So at least there's that for them. And because of that, it's been released in multiple different versions and ways over the years. Like I said earlier, 1986 VHS on USA Home Video, 1987 VHS by IVE, International Video Entertainment. Then in 1991, home video rights were transferred to Avid Home Entertainment, and then it came out again on VHS that year. So that's 3 VHS copies from 86, 87, and 91. Then it was released on DVD 3 times in the U.S. by Anchor Bay Entertainment. The first one was a double feature disc, along with Silent Night, Deadly Night 2 in 2003. The second release was in 2007, and then the film was released on DVD in the UK in 2009 by Arrow Video, and that one has a bunch of extra stuff on it. December of 2012, it was again released alongside Part 2 as a 2-disc Christmas Survival double feature. Which I don't know where you'd come up with that fucking tag for these movies, but containing the same archival bonus features as that 2003 release. And September of 2014, it was finally released on Blu-ray by Anchor Bay Stars Entertainment. No special features were included, except for some commentary and whatnot. And that Blu-ray contains exactly the same release as previous DVD editions, with the extended scenes edited back into the movie, with the noticeable picture quality changes. Now, before I continue, when I watched this, I like I said, I couldn't find it digging around, other than trying to buy it, which I could have swore I owned it, but apparently I didn't when I went back and looked through my stuff. So I need to get around to buying the Blu-ray of this. But I watched it by renting it on YouTube this time around, and you can definitely tell when those little scenes that they spliced back in, you can definitely tell the picture quality goes like 40 layers down. It goes from like, this doesn't look too bad for a movie from 1984 to, ugh, what the fuck happened, Which version did you watch for this?
I have it on VHS, but I watched the Blu-ray not the Arrow one, but the was it Anchor Bay? They put one out?
They did. They put one out in 2014, and then which I was about to get to, in 2017, Shout Factory, through Scream Factory label, they released the 2-disc collector's edition on Blu-ray and DVD.
Okay. Yeah, I have that initial 2014 release on Blu-ray, but I didn't have any of the other ones. Now, that 2014 one is probably the same cut you saw, because it has the unrated scenes added back in, but obviously from a different, less pristine source. Those gore and some of the other scenes that they had excised for whatever reason. I know there were some that weren't even gore or nudity or anything that were excised, just some random scenes.
Yeah, you can tell it even from that print that I watched. Like, a lot of that stuff that they cut out, it didn't look like that. Now, some of it was, obviously for gore, but a lot of it was like, it was just cutaways and stuff like that. I guess for pacing purposes, they cut it out. According to this now, when you're getting your information, you never know if it's directly correct, but according to this, it says there is yet to be a release of the full uncut print from a single source. So that could be something that maybe they unearth one of these days. We literally just talked about it on Deadline Horror News a week or two ago, that they just found a new cut, like basically a director's cut of the stuff that had like 30 extra minutes in it, straight from here's a 35 millimeter print that's like 30 minutes longer, and they just randomly found that from like the Academy Arts and Sciences or something like that. So hey, you never know, there might be a fully uncut 35 millimeter print of this movie somewhere, that just hasn't been dug up yet.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I'd love to see one put together. I mean, now this isn't the worst I've seen. I've seen some movies out there that have the only print they could find is a VHS.
Yeah.
That had the uncut scenes in it, and they actually made a composite of the very nicely remastered 35 millimeter print. And then if you think this is noticeable, try watching some like 5th generation VHS insert put into a 35 millimeter, remaster. I've seen that on a big screen too. I want to say that maybe it was My Bloody Valentine that was like that. That they have a couple of gore scenes that were extended on that they could only find on VHS and not the best condition VHS. And they put that back in. I mean, you could watch it without those scenes in it, or you could watch it with those scenes added in. And I saw it on the big screen with those scenes added in. And wow, you could you could definitely tell the difference when it hits the VHS on a actual movie screen or even on the DVD. Noticeable, but I'm glad to have it though. I'd rather them do that than not do that.
Yeah, yeah. At least you see. At least you get to see it.
Yeah.
Now to that, basically the conclusion is probably the best current version as we sit here and talk about this in December of 2021. The best current version you're going to see of this is probably that 2017 Scream Factory release, because it is the film remastered in 4K resolution from the original negative. So that's probably going to be about as good a copy as you're going to see, as we speak here in December of 2021, unless, like I said, some magic print, pops up from somewhere that, we didn't know about before, and they get to remaster that and blah, blah, blah. But there's a lot of extra stuff on that one, too, like a new documentary and interviews and commentaries and stuff like that. It also contains the original special features from the 2003 and 2012 DVD and the 2014 Blu-ray releases as well. So like that's a 2-disc collector set that's got pretty much everything you would want about this movie that can be had and found up to this point in time that we're talking. So that would be the one you want, and that's the one that I thought that I had bought at some point. It must have been one of those deals where like, yeah, I'm going to get that, and then like, oh, I'll get around to it, and then forgot about it, and then just thought I bought it and never bought it. You know, because I could have swore I had it. But yeah, so there you go. I guess we'll go ahead and get into the cast and crew and everything real quick before we get into the movie itself. Like I said, it was directed by Charles E. Sellier Jr., who's honestly mostly known for like his producing credits. I mean, on IMDb, he's got 72 producing credits because he only has 4 directing credits on here. He directed a documentary in 1979 called Encounter with Disaster, then Silent Night, Deadly Night, the same year a movie called Snowballing, and then the next year in '85, The Annihilators. That's all he ever directed. Because everything else, most of his credits are for 14 credits for writing and 72 for producing. And I guess the biggest known for is there would be as a writer on Miracles and Other Wonders. That was a series in the mid-'90s. He was a producer on Encounters with the Unexplained in the early 2000s. He was a producer on the movie The Adventures of Frontier Fremont. A little bit of everything, man. Like producing-wise, I mean, his credits go all the way back to 1975. Like I said, The Adventures of Frontier Fremont as a writer. Good Lord. As a producer, they go back to The Brothers O'Toole in 1973. But he also did like The Life and Times of Grizzly Adams. You know, a lot of that type documentary type stuff, wilderness type stuff, a lot in the 70s and early 80s. Documentaries on the Bermuda Triangle, you know, stuff like that. He was one of the pioneers of market testing, like films and stuff, and something called four-walling, quote-unquote four-walling, which is renting a theater to show his movies, thereby enabling him to keep all the profits for himself. So apparently he was one of the first dudes to do this, like in the late 70s, which it says garnered him the distinction of having more pictures in the top 50 independent grossers than any other independent producer in the 1970s. So a lot of that Grizzly Adams type stuff. And he founded and was the president of Grizzly Adams Productions, Inc. So, you know, that was the kind of stuff that he did. In Search of Noah's Ark, Chariots of the Gods, In Search of Historic Jesus, The Bermuda Triangle, 1978. One of your favorite movies from 1981, The Boogans.
Oh, yeah, The Boogans. Yeah, that's fun. That is.
But yeah, so interesting career the guy had. Unfortunately, he passed in January of 2011 at the age of 67, so still fairly young when he passed. From what I could tell, he was still somewhat active, you know, like it seemed like around 2008 is when he kind of stopped doing stuff, so he must have had some type of illness. I didn't read past, you know, too far into what happened to him there. Clearly he left a mark on the business, you know, for a lot of different reasons there for sure.
He produced The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which was a TV version of that tale, and it had Jeff Goldblum in it as Ichabod Crane. I don't know. I remember seeing that on TV, and that was on VHS. But of course, I don't know if it ever got released on DVD or not. But I would love to see that again. Yeah. I mean, it's not, you know, no great shakes or whatever. It's just a nostalgic thing. I remember it from back then, but I haven't seen it since.
It was written by Michael Hickey, but it's based on a story by Paul Kamey. Michael Hickey, he would basically most be known for this and Silent Night, writer of Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. You know, I guess he gets credit on that one as well. He was on the crew for the movie Tusks in 1988. You know, that's basically about it, honestly. I mean, like, he doesn't have an extensive resume here, honestly. Like, he was himself in Sleigh Bells Ring, the story of Silent Night, Deadly Night, which is a video documentary. I'm assuming that must have come out on that Scream Factory Blu-ray because it was in 2017. He was part of Tusk in 1988, and then he wrote Silent Night, Deadly Night, and the characters based by him in Part 2. That's it. Nothing else. Not even sure if he's still alive or not. I mean, according to this, you know, it looks like he is. But yeah, I guess he left the business after that. I don't know what he went on to do. But like I said, it was based on a story by Paul Kamey, and his only credits are this one and the second one too. And I'm assuming the second one is just, you know, by osmosis, right? Because it's his story.
I think it was that Paul Kamey that had submitted a script to, I don't know if the TriStar or whoever, just submitted a script, and then they didn't like the script. It wasn't the same as this movie, but there was something to do with a Santa killer in there, and they took that little piece out and made Silent Night, Deadly Night from it, and I think they gave him They probably few of them a few bucks or whatever, and a title credit. But they pretty much ripped his whole story apart and just took the Santa Killer out and made. And the other guy wrote the screenplay to Silent Night, Deadly Night, and it was called Sleigh Ride, I believe, initially.
Now that's another thing. Yeah, the working title of this movie was Sleigh Ride.
Yeah, SLAY, Sleigh Ride.
Yeah, Sleigh Ride. Yeah, which is another cool title. You know, I don't think it's that much worse or better than Silent Night, Deadly Night. I mean, that's an awesome title too. But either way, you know, I think it would have been all right. This one probably makes more sense for what the story they're trying to tell. But
while we're talking about that Sleigh Ride, don't go out there looking for a book called Sleigh Ride, because apparently there's an interview with Charles Sellier, the director, where he said something about that they had found a book or something, and the movie was based on the book Sleigh Ride. But I guess he got confused because it was that other story I told you about where the Paul Cammey or whatever had written the script, and they threw that script out and just took the Santa Killer out and made the movie and called it Sleigh Ride. But
yeah.
So people have been looking for a novel called Sleigh Ride that Silent Night, Deadly Night. There isn't one.
Yeah, does not exist.
Yeah.
But it was produced by Ira Barmak, who would be best known for the ABC Afternoon Play Break in 1975. A producer on Hotel Colonial. Not a lot of credits, honestly. He's only got 10 producing credits. Those are just kind of some of the highlights there that you may or may not have heard of. I mean, like, it looks like he's still alive, but like really, like his last producing credit was Bells from the Deep, Faith and Superstition in Russia. It's a documentary in 1993. He's actually got 7 acting credits from back in the 70s. He was in a couple of TV series and stuff like that. An episode of Ben Casey and The Fugitive back in the 60s. But otherwise, he only has 4 writing credits for a TV movie called Brenda Starr, another one called The Other Side of Victory, third called Ordinary Heroes. These are all TV movies. And then he wrote the screenplay for Hotel Colonial. So it looks like really, like past 1993, he just kind of found something else to do because like he has no other credits. So I guess we'll get into the cast. The top name is Lillian Shaven, who plays Mother Superior, which, you know, she plays the bitch perfectly in this movie, right? I'll give her that.
Yeah.
But she had, 148 acting credits on IMDb that date all the way back to 1950. She was in an episode of The Kraft Theater. That's also awesome, by the way, when we look at like stuff from the 40s and 50s, how like it'll be like the Marlboro Cigarette Theater or some shit like that, you know?
Yeah.
That's just what they called programs back then. Like whoever's sponsoring it, yep, you get to name the program, you know? But there'll always be like some who's who of actors, you know, that always played in some random episode of it or something like that. But yeah, all the way through the 50s and into the 60s, a lot of film and TV roles. I mean, she was in an episode of The Adventures of Superman in 1957. Alfred Hitchcock Presents. She was in an episode of that in 1958. Perry Mason. You know, it looks like pretty much all the same kind of stuff. She's mostly known for. I'll just give you the known fors on IMDb. She was in Predator 2 in 1990. She was in Universal Soldier in 1992. Of course, Silent Night, Deadly Night, and then she was also in Catch Me If You Can. You know, the Leonardo DiCaprio, Tom Hanks flick from 2002. She was in that. But yeah, unfortunately, Lillian Shaven passed away in June of 2008 at the age of 82. But it looks like she was working all the way up to the end, man. Like she was in a few short films and an episode of the series Ugly Betty in 2007. And then the actual last credit she got as an actress was The Passing, that came out, 3 years after she died. In 2011, she had a role in that. So, unfortunately, she's no longer with us. But she'll definitely be remembered for a lot of roles that we just went through. But I'd say Mother Superior in this movie is definitely one of them, at least in the horror circles, right? Like this is one that's a remembered role because she's one of the reasons why this whole movie happens to begin with. Really, you know?
Yeah. She's a catalyst.
Yeah,
one of
big
them.
Time. The lady that plays Sister Margaret, you know, this is basically the one that tries to actually help Billy throughout the movie, was played by Gilmer McCormick. She would best be known for this and the movie Godspell in 1973. She was in Hill Street Blues, the series from the 80s. A movie called Slaughterhouse 5. I mean, she's only got 14 acting credits, and according to this, she's still alive. She was born in 1947, but she's still She's still around, but apparently she just left the business. Basically, she was in the episode of the TV series I Had Three Wives in 1985. So this is right after Silent Night, Deadly Night, and then said, you know what, I'm out. It's always interesting to me, like, what happened to him, you know? We ought to do where in the world or whatever happened to this person kind of segment with stuff like that, because, you know, she did have some, you know, some small success, and then just, you know what, fuck it, I'm done. There's a number of other ones. I'll mention, obviously, the biggest one is the one that plays Billy. I'm trying to, yeah, okay, because there's like, when you're looking at the credits, there's like, 3 different versions of Billy. The youngest one, Billy at 5 years old, was played by Jonathan Best. He was mainly, honestly, like, he's only got 7 acting credits, and it was like TV movie type stuff. It looks like he's some voices and some cartoons and stuff like that, but not much else. The slightly older version, a few years later, Billy at age 8, was played by Danny Wagner. Same deal, like, actually less. This is his only credit of anything. So I guess he tried it out and said, nope. I guess his parents, like, holy shit, what did we let our kid do? And then pulled him out. Never did anything ever again. But then the older version of Billy is played by Robert Brian Wilson, who, honestly, himself, he's only got 14 acting credits, because everything else is like self-credits and stuff, you know, probably like in documentaries and stuff like that. But this was his debut in anything, like feature-length, short, whatever. He was in a few TV series, such as 30-something and Dynasty, an episode of Perfect Strangers and Knots Landing. You know, in the years that followed this, there was a TV movie called Gunsmoke, The Last Apache, because, you know, there was a number of those Gunsmoke movies back in, like, the 80s and 90s.
Oh, yeah.
He was in a TV series called Generations in 1990, and then he played in a handful of episodes in Santa Barbara, the soap opera Santa Barbara, in the early in the mid 80s all the way into the early 90s. Then an episode of Jake and the Fat Man. But then that was in 1992. So all that stuff I just said was basically from 84 to 92, and then nothing at all until 2 TV movies in 2016. He was in one called The Wrong Roommate and another one called A Husband for Christmas. So imagine having this dude in another Christmas movie.
Yeah.
But
so his first movie was a Christmas slasher movie, and his last movie so far has been
and it looks
like it would be on the Hallmark Channel.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, A Husband for Christmas. That's exactly what it looks like. Like one of those. If it's not, dude, it's got to be, because it's it's one of those like Hallmark looking things. It's got like Eric Roberts and Vivica Fox in it. You know, so like, it's got to be one of those Hallmark movies. So yeah, that's basically the bookends of his acting career so far. Like I said, he's still alive. Just, you know, I guess just found some other things to do for a long time there, because didn't do anything until that, really. So once again, it's always interesting, especially someone like that who's like basically the face of a cult classic. You know, you would think somewhere along the line, you know, he would have been in something else in all those years, but not until just a few years ago, and then nothing else since. So it's like he dipped his toes back in and said, you know what, I'm just going to go back to selling real estate or whatever the hell I was doing.
I know he was embarrassed about this movie for a while. I read something like that.
I guess I wouldn't be, but I guess, you know, you could understand it if you're trying to be like something serious, and then like you're in this that becomes a controversial thing, and you're basically the face of it. Yeah. You could see it, you know, like, well, you know what, I'm going to step back. Like, I could see why, but you know, it is what it is. There's a number of other like recognizable faces and stuff, you know, in the movie. I'm blanking on what was the name of the boss of the guy, because I've seen that guy in some other stuff, and I can't think of what his name was.
Mr. Sims, yeah.
Mr. Sims, yeah, that was played by Britt Leach. That was the one that I wanted to bring up, because he is a somewhat recognizable face in like small character actor type roles, especially throughout the 80s. I mean, he was in Weird Science, The Great Outdoors, The Last Starfighter. He's still alive, but like apparently, like I said, he had a good run in the 80s, and then in 1991 he had an uncredited role in Father of the Bride, you know, the one with Steve Martin. And then that's it.
He was in one of my favorite shows from back in the 80s, The Master. And then, you know, the Master, we've talked about this on the show before. Lee Van Cleef as a ninja.
Yeah.
Timothy Van Patten was in it.
We should just watch every episode of that and then just do one whole review of that show.
We can watch the whole thing is only like 13 episodes. It only lasted like one season or part of it.
So there you go. Like I said, tons of all the 80s series and stuff like that, you know, throughout the decade, but the role in The Great Outdoors. And I think that one was a pretty recognizable role in that one. Wasn't that one of the guys that was talking about the bald-headed bear ass or something like that? It was one of those like standout weird character actor roles. But he was in an episode of Tales from the Crypt. Murder, She Wrote. Literally the last two things he did, like I said, was an episode of Quantum Leap in 1991 and then Father of the Bride and then stepped away. So recognizable face, just for whatever reason, just went into other things. But the only other one I'll mention before we get into the movie, because this is the first time we've ever done, that I can recall, we've ever done a movie with her in it, believe it or fucking not, Linnea Quigley as Denise. Somehow.
Yep, we finally get Linnea Quigley movie under the belt.
Some fucking how, we've gone 3+ years of doing this podcast, and we haven't actually talked about a damn Linnea Quigley movie.
Nope. We did. No, we did. We do it. Return of the Living Dead. I forgot that.
Oh, yeah, damn. You're right. Yep. Good Lord. How could I forget that? Maybe, you know what? I know what I'm thinking of now, because it wasn't long after we did Return of the Living Dead where you met Linnea Quigley at, like, one of those conventions.
Oh, yeah.
And then you got that little sound snippet, like, from her that I played at the beginning of the show. And I think what I was thinking about was this is the first time we were able to use it in a movie that she was in. Because I think we have used it a time or two before, like in our anniversary show or something like that, her tossing to, you're listening to the All-American Spook Show or whatever. But, yeah, this is the first time that we've actually talked about a movie that she was in, and we're able to use that clip. So maybe that's what I was thinking of. But, yeah, even still, though, only 2 movies for an 80s Scream Queen. That's all we've been able to pull so far. I mean, she has.
And if you look on IMDb, she's got 174 credits. Yeah. and we've only come to 2.
This is the second. Yeah, that's crazy. And she's still active today. Still does stuff, up to this day. And there's stuff that's in pre-production that she's filming that hasn't come out yet. So very active still today. But Return of the Living Dead, this movie, Night of the Demons, Graduation Day. Although it's kind of funny, out of all the movies that she's done, like why they would put Silent Night, Deadly Night as one of the ones she's known for, where she's only in it for like 5 minutes. Right? Like there's movies she has a bigger
memorable thing, like she's probably got one of the best deaths in the movie, if not the best. Yeah. And that whole antler scene and whatever. But yeah, it's true.
Out of all the ones from the 80s that she was in, I mean, she's a Scream Queen. I mean, she's in tons of movies. From starting in 1975 all through the 80s till today, and that one's one of the ones, not Tourist Trap or what else? Good Lord, just kind of skimming through the movies here. Savage Streets.
she played even smaller of a role in Tourist Trap. I think she was one of the mannequins.
Yeah. Creepazoids, Sorority Babes in the Slime Ball, Bolorama, which we've talked about a number of times, which we definitely need to get to. Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, we've talked about. Night of the Demons, like I mentioned. Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. Now, we will get to that. You can guarantee that, even if we don't get to the other ones, we will get to that. The list goes on and on. Good Robot Ninja. Good stuff. But, yeah, so I just felt it was necessary to mention her since, we don't really often get to talk about her too much, but we will. I mean, there's tons of stuff to get to there. We just haven't got to it yet. So, one of the true horror icons, Linnea Quigley.
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack. We promise to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, your sweet tooth. So visit our refreshment center now. Let's go.
For you, the listeners of the All-American Spook Show Horror Podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out the service. Like we always mention, you sign up, using audibletrial.com/spookshow. They give you a credit. You can take that credit and get any audiobook, there on Audible that you'd like. If you cancel it right after that, you get to keep the book. So it helps us out. You get a free book, win-win. I just went in and typed in Christmas horror just to see what would pop up, and a lot popped up, honestly. Like at least around 100 and something here. But I'll just read off a couple here off the top. The 12 Terrors of Christmas, a Christmas horror anthology. Various authors, Claudette Melanson, Lynn Lamb. That one's right at 13 hours long, so a lot of listening there. 12 Days of Christmas Horror by Rick Wood. And that's apparently the first book of Rick Wood's horror anthologies. And that one's just a little over 2 hours long, so that sounds interesting. And one last one, because this is an awesome title. Hark, the Herald Angels Scream. It looks like kind of like a horror anthology. There's various authors here. That one is just over 11 and a half hours long, so a lot of good Christmas horror there. And like I said, there's a lot of other good examples, and maybe we can read those again on the next Audible read, because there's plenty to choose from there. So if you're looking for some Christmas horror, go over to audibletrial.com/spookshow. Again, that's audibletrial.com/spookshow for your free audio book. So, like I said, it's always a cool deal. You get that credit. You know, you get to keep the book. So, like I said, helps us out, helps you out. You get a free book, win-win. You scratch our back, we scratch yours. All right, so I guess we'll go ahead and, since we've had a lot of shit to talk about in this movie, we'll go ahead and get into the film itself. Now, it starts off basically in 1971 when a little boy named Billy and his family, they're on a trip to go visit his grandpa at a nursing home in Utah, where basically his grandpa, I guess, has got Alzheimer's. I don't know what the hell's going on with him, but he's catatonic. And they're like, all right, Billy.
Nope. The sign outside says Utah Mental Home.
Okay, so yeah, he must have went nuts. Okay. Like I said, I haven't watched, I'll be honest with you, I haven't watched any of the other sequels of this, so I don't know where they take the story. You know, and do they ever explain what the hell happened to Grandpa, like in some prequel or something like that, or or do they just like leave it where it lies?
Yeah, I think so. I don't recall that. I mean, it's been forever since I've seen the third one.
You would think about it. You would think there's a story there, right? Like you could probably get 10 or 15 minutes out of a movie or a whole movie out of that. Well, hell, let's just go back and say like what made his grandpa crazy. You know, what led him to this, but. So yeah, his grandpa doesn't talk or anything, and so they decide it's okay to leave old 5-year-old Billy there with catatonic grandpa while they go handle whatever the fuck it is they got to go handle. Of course, grandpa like immediately wakes up and tells Billy to like be scared of Santa Claus because he only gives presents to kids who've been good, and then he punishes the naughty, and basically just scares the shit out of him right there on the spot, and then that's the famous pull that, I pulled the little audio clip in the open that you heard earlier. What did he say? Is that you see Santa Claus tonight, you better run, boy.
Better run for your life.
You better run for your life. And then as soon as the parents walk up, he like instantly straightens back up. Like, meanwhile, Billy's just sitting there like, what the fuck? So, of course, right after this, on their way home, by the way, like, they drive all the way to fuck up here just to say, like, well, he's still in a coma. Time to go. Like, they're only there for 5 minutes. Seems like a simple phone call would have sufficed, but nonetheless, they turn back around and they're going home. And, of course, this motherfucker... All right, so in between this, you see a little scene of a guy dressed as Santa going to a gas station and hold it up and like brutally kills the guy, right? Like he shoots some guy, like goes for his gun, and then he shoots him twice more, like once in the head, and then he just takes off.
By the way, if you're ever in a convenience store and you're working there and you got a gun under the counter and you're getting robbed, don't announce that you're about to do something, because the guy like reaches for his gun under the counter and then I forget what he says, but he says something that tips the guy off. The guy shoots him. Like, don't say anything.
No, you need to pull that gun up and use it before it gets used on you. So.
Yeah. Like that happens in these movies sometimes. That people don't want to announce what they're going to do, like some sound they make or something like, oh,
yeah.
And then,
try to be more subtle. I mean, you've got the gun right there. Yeah. Frankly, he had the drop on him. He didn't even have to raise it up, man. Just shoot him right through the damn boom.
Yeah.
That guy wouldn't even know what happened. But anyway, so he lays the guy, the gas attendant down. And then takes off, and he's like, it's only like $35 or whatever the fuck, right? So he gets in his car and takes off, and then I guess the car breaks down, or maybe it's just a ruse. I don't know what the hell. Billy and his family come upon this guy dressed as Santa, broke down in the middle of the road, and then, of course, he immediately, like, slaughters the family. I guess he's trying to steal the car, right? Like, Billy gets out of the car and runs and hides in the bushes.
I love Billy's reaction first, too, whenever they see him in the distance, and the parents are like, think Billy's asleep in the back seat, and they're like, should we wake him up? Because they see, oh, look at Santa, he's broke down, it's cute.
Yeah.
Then Billy's in the back seat already awake, wide-eyed, like, no, stop.
After Grandpa just traumatized the shit out of him. So perfect timing here. Perfect timing. But yeah, Billy's reaction is to run the fuck away and abandon his family like as fast as he can. Like, fuck this shit, runs out and like hides in the bushes. And the dude comes over and slaughters his family. Like, he basically kind of like tries to rape the mom, right? And then ends up slitting her throat. This after like shooting at the car before he even approaches, right? Yeah, I think he like just pulls out a gun and starts shooting at him right before, and that's when
Well,
Billy runs.
that guy. Oh, he pulled the gun. He pulled the gun out, and then I think that's when the dad like hit the. Didn't he hit it in reverse?
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, he hits it in reverse
Around,
and then
but
like goes in the ditch.
shot at him as he was putting it in reverse, and
Yeah.
I guess he hit the dad. I guess because then he opens the door and the dad falls out because he's been shot.
And that's when Billy takes off, right when the mom is like struggling. He pulls the mom out, basically, at least tries to rape her, then slits her throat. Now this was one of those scenes where you could tell like they spliced it back in on the cut that I watched because you could see him. The film degradation part of it, like it just looked kind of shitty, but you could actually see him like as he's over her, cut her throat. But I should mention that he does have a little baby brother in the car, Ricky. Billy just hides or whatever, and then so basically the parents are dead. Ricky's just little baby crying in the back seat as Billy's hiding in the bushes. So you fast forward to 3 years later, in December of 1974 now in the movie. So now you've got Billy is 8 years old and his little brother now is 4 years old, Ricky. They're now living in an orphanage which is now you're introduced to the character Mother Superior because she's the nun or whatever that runs the orphanage, who basically just beats the shit out of kids who misbehave and and disciplinarian or whatever, and considers punishment to be a good thing or whatever. So she's real harsh on him, even though she knows specifically Billy has been through this horrible trauma, but yet a good smacking will fix him, that kind of mentality. So Sister Margaret, who's trying to help a little bit more than wacko Mother Superior, she's trying to help Billy, but he's regularly getting punished for every little thing that he does, and of course the orphanage invites like a man in a Santa Claus suit to visit the kids, and then Billy just they try to force him to sit on Santa's lap, right? And then Billy's like, oh hell no, and then punches the dude. I mean, like lays the motherfucker out.
Knocks him out of the chair, like over the chair onto the floor.
8-year-old boy.
Both nostrils are bleeding.
Yeah. And the Santa's like, what the hell? As he's sitting there like a bloody nose.
Anyway.
Yeah. So now we fast forward to 10 years later. You're now in the spring of 1984. They're quick to point out that this is the spring. You're not at Christmas time now. So Billy has just turned 18. So now he's like, it's time for him to leave the orphanage, to live the normal life. So Sister Margaret helps him get a job, like as a stock boy at the local toy store. He eventually, you see like there's these scenes here. By the way, this is probably a good part to mention because I think this is where there's like a montage scene with some weird music. The music in this movie is fucking weird. Like these made up Christmas songs, like aren't Christmas songs like public domain? Like did they have to make up their own Christmas songs for this movie? Couldn't they just use Jingle Bells?
That one's a doozy, though. The Santa's watching, Santa's waiting.
Yeah. Santa's creeping. It paints quite a picture, no doubt about that. But still, I'm sitting there watching. I'm like, what the fuck's up with these songs? Like, I don't remember ever hearing any of these songs at Christmas time. Meanwhile, there's carolers singing these songs that you've never heard.
Oh, yeah, the carol songs, too?
Yeah. Like, almost none of them in this movie. I mean, there's a few in there, right? But most of them are, like, songs that I'm pretty sure they just made up, or they just decided, like, hey, let's make our own Christmas songs for this. I get the creepy aspect of it, but still, like, there's plenty of free music for you. You didn't have to go this far, Seems like you added more work for yourself, but there's another weird, like, un-Christmas related song playing, like, during this little montage, right, where he's kind of getting used to working at the toy store and living a normal life, and he gets a crush on his, there's a girl that works there named Pamela. He has a crush on her, and, oh yeah, I forgot about the, when he gets punished at the, orphanage when he's younger, and he hears something, and then he goes and looks to the keyhole, and it's like two people in there having sex, and then basically he gets punished for that for some reason, like, for sitting there, like, watching it. So this is part.
The spirit goes in there and beats the hell out of the guy and the girl that are having sex too.
Yeah. By the way, who the hell are the guy and the girl? Are they just older orphan kids that are there, and like they just decided to go into the supply room or something and screw, and then like that's never explained. Like who the fuck was that? Were they just visiting the orphanage? Was it two older kids? I don't know who they were, because it never came up again. It was just like,
yeah, they looked like they were like in their early 20s.
Yeah, like what the fuck are they doing there? There's a lot of questionable things in this movie, no doubt. That's one of them.
Oh yeah, well, while I'm thinking about it, because we might not even remember later, is Billy's brother, was in the orphanage with him too. Billy's brother, who was, I guess, under the age of 1 when the incident happened, and when his parents were killed. And I don't know, how would you say it looked like he was when they were in the orphanage? That was like 4 or 5 years later, I believe, right? When they cut
I think like the time jump basically is like it happens in 1971, and then it's 1974, so that's what, 3 years later, right?
It goes to 1984, 10 years later.
And then 10 years later. So yeah, he should be. That means that his little brother would be probably what, 13, something like that, give or take.
Yeah, 13 and and then there's a scene. I mean, that we get to his brother later, and he doesn't look like he would. He looks like he's way too young.
Yeah, he looks like he's 10 instead of like the 13 or 14 he's supposed to be. Yeah, yeah. Because I didn't even know who the fuck that kid was until they're like, Ricky, that's a good boy, much better than his brother or whatever. And then I'm like, oh, okay, that's that's the little kid. Okay, I get it. But the reason I bring up the whole sex thing, like that, he sees it through the keyhole or whatever. Like that's just another layer that fucks him up like years later, because now he's having like thoughts about his coworker Pam, and then he sees all these like horrible visions of that, of them screwing in that supply closet or whatever, and then him getting punished, and then his parents getting, or his mom in particular, being raped by Santa. So he keeps having these weird flashbacks of all this stuff as he's thinking about her. So yeah, that's all part of the montage there. I'm guessing that was only there, number one, just to add another layer to fuck up this kid, right? But number two, gratuitous sex. It's 1984, and we have to have a gratuitous sex scene in it, right? So they had to up the tit ratio by slipping in this scene of these people screwing in the closet. But anyway, so fast forward to on Christmas Eve, the dude that plays Santa, like, can't be Santa, there for the toy store. So of course, his boss, Mr. Sims, makes Billy become Santa. So everybody in the audience is like, oh no, the one dude.
Oh yeah, remember the first part right before that? Whenever they start decorating for Christmas and they're putting up the decorations in the store, and then they unfurl this banner that's got like a big picture of Santa, and the music is playing like Christmas music.
Yeah,
and then the look on Billy's face is like absolute utter horror.
Yeah, he's terrified, and he's got like the cold sweats.
And on the banner, yeah.
He's got like the cold sweats, and they just completely ignore that when just later they tell him to dress like Santa. So he plays reluctantly. He plays Santa, and then like there's a scene in there where like the kids are sitting on his lap or whatever, and the one kid's like freaking out, like, oh, I don't want to be in your lap, the little girl, and then he's just like, you better sit still or I'll punish you. He's a Jesus, man. He's just basically threatening to come and kill her if she's not cool,
And then the parents are like out of range of hearing, so they can't hear what he said. But they're like, they see that she's behaving now and everything, and they're like, oh, he's so great with kids.
Yeah. Meanwhile, he just threatened to like slit her throat.
Austin's looking at him like nodding with approval. Mr. Sims like, he is.
Yep, pretty good. I'm gonna mark it on the list there. He's good. So then after this, the Christmas Eve, the store is closed. Like, all right, the Christmas rush is over. Let's have a fucking party. So they unfurl the tablecloths and pull out the liquor and everything. So instantly, Christmas Eve party there. For the 5 or 6 people they have working there.
So, there's another great line from Mr. Sims right there too. As soon as he locks the door and turns around, he's like, "All right, that's it. That's the last of the customers. Let's get shit-faced."
Which, especially back in the day, this is definitely something that would have happened. Like, you don't see and hear so much things like that anymore. Like, small little company, everybody getting liquored up and stuff like that. But yeah, back in those days, this is definitely something that would have happened. Like, all right, close the store, pull out the bottles of liquor, let's get to it. But anyways, Billy, he's still in the Santa Claus suit at the party, and he's trying to. He kind of warms up. He's having a good time or whatever, but he keeps having these like flashbacks and shit of his parents and everything, that's horrible has happened to him. So he's depressed, and he starts drinking with Mr. Sims, which I'm sure that didn't help the matter. So he sees the guy that works with him in the stockroom is Andy. He sees him like trying to make out with Pamela, or actually he does make out with Pamela, And then they go to the back room, basically like, Andy's trying to, have sex with Pamela out in the back room. So at this point, Billy, like, you can see like the switch flip in his head, like this isn't going to end well. Billy goes into the stock room and kind of like as soon as he goes back there, he sees Andy trying to rape Pamela, and that right there, flip. That was all it took. Like, this triggered him to go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs right on the spot. And he grabs some Christmas lights and goes over to Andy and hangs him. Like, not off of something either. Like, wraps him around his throat and picks him up by the lights and hangs him and kills him. And then it's like something like, good. Something like that, right? that he just snuffed this person out. Like, because, like, now he's got his psychosis now. He's done flipped. He thinks he's basically Santa, and that he's got to dole out the naughty punishment, right? That's the whole premise of what happens here. Then Pamela's like, what the fuck? And then he just stabs her to death.
With a box cutter, right?
Yeah, I think he grabbed like a box cutter that was on the shelf there and just goes to town on her. So now, two murder.
That's the scene where it flips to the extra gore scene from the less pristine print, where you can tell where the R-rated cut was, where he goes to stab her. Then they cut, and that's where the R-rated scene would have been. And then they have the added scene of him showing the box cutter slicing down her stomach.
Then after that, Mr. Sims, who's in there, drinking with Miss Randall, who's like the manager or whatever, he hears something, so he goes back to the back room, and then Billy kills him. I'm blanking on how he killed him. It was in the back room, but I can't remember what he did to him. No, he axed him, right?
No, the hammer. Are you talking about Mr. Sims?
Yeah. Didn't he take an axe and brain him in the head?
It was a hammer.
Hammer, that's hammer. What it was. Yeah, he grabbed a hammer when Mr. Sims come back there. Hey, what the hell? And then hammers him, like, and sticks a hammer in his head and kills him. He comes out to the main store or whatever and basically chases down Mrs. Randall. And didn't he shoot her with a bow and arrow? Yeah. He shot her like in the gut with a arrow. So then, of course, like, he takes off after this, and then Sister Margaret shows up because she has now put two and two together. That like, oh shit, they've done asked him to play Santa. He's gonna go ape shit. So she goes down to the toy store to help out, and all she does is walk in on the carnage. He's just killed 4 people at this point. So like, well, shit, too little, too late. So she goes back to the orphanage or whatever to get help. Then Billy randomly breaks into a house nearby, where this is where you get the Linnea Quigley scene, where she's Denise and I guess her boyfriend or whatever, Tommy, they're having sex, and they're watching like a little girl. I guess maybe it's her sister, or maybe she's a babysitter. I don't know. It's not, that whole thing isn't fleshed out, but either way, like, they're downstairs having sex on the pool table, and there's a little girl named Cindy upstairs sleeping. She hears a noise or whatever and goes upstairs, and then she turns around, he's there, he grabs a hold of her, and he impales her, Denise, the Linnea Quigley part, on a set of deer antlers on the wall. And this you could definitely tell, once again, the different cut versions or whatever, because they kept flashing back and forth. Like, you can tell, like, the regular cut would have been like him grabbing a hold of her and sticking her up there, but you don't really see it. I guess kind of happen, but the stuff that they spliced in, you can see like the antlers go through her midsection. So, it's a pretty cool effect. And then he also, Tommy comes upstairs, the guy she was screwing, just prior to that. And he just tosses him through a window. And the fucking brutalness of the window kill. Like, this motherfucker just gets thrown through a window. Meanwhile, they cut to him, and he's got like a shard of glass stuck in his head, like one like bigger than the size of the window in his side.
Remember Suspiria, the beginning scene of that?
Yeah, you're right.
Remember that? That kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah, it's very, very similar. So now he's killed 2 more. So what's that? His total is 6 now. Then he wakes Cindy up, of course, upstairs, and asks if she's been naughty or nice, and she says nice. So then he gives her the bloody utility knife that he just killed. What was her face? The girl he liked, Pamela. I think he just killed Pamela with it. He just hands it to her and then just walks away. And she's looking at it like, what the fuck? So then there's this. This is just like to get in a couple more kills scene. So there's these 2 guys in the middle of the night on Christmas Eve. They just decide to take their sleds out and go sliding down a hill on some virgin snow. And then these other 2 guys come up and like kick, basically just beat the crap out of them and take their sleds for no reason. Like, what the fuck are these guys doing out in the middle of the woods at like, some late hour of the night on Christmas Eve, fighting over sleds and shit? But whatever, here we are. So these other two guys.
Yeah, they're having a good time at it. You know.
I get it. Well, to each their own, but maybe this is some country shit. I don't know. This is beyond me, but so this is what they do on Christmas Eve. But these other two guys come along, take their sleds, and then the one guy slides down the hill, and he's waiting for the other guy to come down, and then Billy walks up and just decapitates the motherfucker as he's sliding down the hill, and then like the rest of his corpse just comes on down the hill, and the guy's like, "What the?" Starts screaming, and then the head rolls down the hill. So, like I said, I guess this was all just to set up, a headless corpse gag.
Yeah. What kind of cool decapitation we can get here with the sled, sled motion, head getting chopped off?
Yeah.
How do we fit in the movie somewhere? Okay.
Let's not worry about how it actually fits. Let's just do it. All right, sounds good. So that's up to, 8 murders now. So then the next morning, the orphanage, because now they've put 2 and 2 together, like he's probably heading to the orphanage. So, they got a couple cops there, and Sister Margaret, who now they know that Billy has done this, and so now they're, kind of on alert. So a guy shows up at the orphanage dressed in a Santa suit, and the cops just shoot him dead. And they're like, "Oh, God, that wasn't Billy. That was Father O'Brien. He must not have heard you because he's deaf." Because they're like, he's dressed like Santa and he didn't respond. Yes, because he's deaf. Oh, that's horrible.
It's terrible. I just shot a priest and Santa.
Yeah, a deaf priest at that. My God, you're going straight to hell. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. You can't help but laugh, though, at the setup of the whole thing. Like, oh, Jesus, that wasn't Billy. That was a priest, and he was deaf. That's why he didn't respond.
Now, if you think that's fun watching it yourself, try seeing that movie on a big screen with a bunch of like-minded people. And they're like, that was part of the thing I was talking about, where there's certain scenes in there where you kind of think it's kind of, it's kind of funny in a B-movie kind of way until you get in there with an audience.
Yeah.
And then serious.
And then everybody's just rolling.
Yeah.
You just shot to death a deaf pastor, and everybody's just laughing. So anyways, Officer Barnes, he's the one left, like patrolling the area. He eventually catches the axe to the chest by Billy. Like he goes out to this little outshed or whatever that was, like a utility shed that goes underground, and he comes back up, and then Billy catches him right in the chest with the axe, and he falls back down the stairs. So that's 9 murders you can put on Billy. Then now Billy goes into the orphanage and confronts Mother Superior, who's 10 years older, and now she's in a wheelchair. And she's basically just like, "Fuck this dude, he's a pussy." She's still like taunting this dude, over the whole matter. And he like raises up the axe or whatever, and he's about to kill her. And then one of the cops comes in with, I think right at that time with like Sister Margaret, right, and shoots him in the back. And then Billy drops dead to the floor. And then he didn't drop dead. He drops to the floor, and then right before he dies, he's like, "You're safe now. Santa Claus is gone." And then he dies. And then you cut over to his brother Ricky, remember who we mentioned earlier, who's supposed to be 14, but he looks more like 10. He just kind of, he's got like this like eat shit and die look at Mother Superior. And then he just says, "Naughty," and that's the end of the movie. So clearly setting up that now that he's going to be the nutcase of the story. So there you go, Silent Night, Deadly Night from 1984, the movie that started a little mini franchise there with 4 more sequels and then a reboot in 2012. So obviously, like we said, Will and Donnie weren't able to be here to give their star rating and all the other stuff. But so I guess I'll toss to you first. What's your star rating on this one?
This is a movie I've seen many times, and it's one of those that's just, I think it's a classic Christmas horror. Yeah, it's not my favorite. My favorite of the Christmas horror films I've seen so far is still the original Black Christmas. But this is probably the second. I had to choose of all the Christmas horror movies I've seen, and I haven't seen all of them yet, but I've seen a good many of them. This is probably my second one on, and that also comes with the nostalgia of having seen it back then in the 86 or so when I first saw it, and seen it many times over the years. And I enjoy it every time. It's fun. Seeing it on the big screen, as I mentioned, was just amazing. With a bunch of like-minded people. That just cemented it even more. I have to go. I don't think I can go any lower than 3 3/4 stars. enjoy it. I mean, it's probably not worth that rating when you talk about filmmaking as far as the logistics and technicalities of filmmaking or whatever. I just enjoyed the hell out of this movie as a Christmas horror film. So yeah, 3 3/4 for me.
Myself, I think I'm gonna go 2 3/4. It's not that I dislike the movie. It's just that, like, basically based on my own scale, I have to go a little bit less than Black Christmas. And now, I guess to be fair to you, I'll tell you, because I pulled it up while you were talking. You gave Black Christmas 3 3/4. So.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, so
yeah,
that's about the same. So, like, I gave Black Christmas 3/4, and I think I like Black Christmas a little more than this. So I'm just going to go slightly below it myself.
Yeah, I do like Black Christmas better, but I probably would have. I mean, I don't know. I probably would have given Black Christmas 4. I don't really know why I didn't give it 4, but
yeah.
Since I gave it 3 3/4, I'll go down to 3.5 on this one.
Okay, yeah, that's. I mean, just for full disclosure, that's probably fair just to do that now. You know,
yeah.
and you know, once we do the 4th anniversary show next October, you know, we can have a chance to go up or down or whatever. But I think if you're just comparing these movies to each other, you know, and I'm not going to go through all the Christmas movies that we've talked about, but I think Black Christmas is a fairly good comparison to this as far as the higher ranked Christmas films, Christmas horror movies. I'm going to go slightly below that one. But that doesn't mean I don't like this one. It's just a notch below that one. But getting back to this one though, I think it's pretty much everything you would want if you were wanting to watch a Christmas slasher flick. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, because even Black Christmas, I know it's kind of considered one of the early slasher flicks, right? Early slasher flicks. But I think this one takes it to another level as far as it's a different type of slasher, you know? So if you're just wanting to see some good 80s, cheap thrills and kills, popcorn type flick, this is the one for you for sure, in my opinion. Because Black Christmas is a little bit deeper and a different setup and everything. So it's almost like a whole completely different type of scenario there. I'll say that, but it'll be interesting to see what Donnie and Will thought about it. Because I think you and I are very similar in our thoughts on these type of movies, and sometimes they're similar to each other but different from us. You know what I mean? So it will be interesting to see what they've got to say about it. All right, so like I said, Will and Donnie couldn't be with us to give us their star ratings. It'll be interesting to see what they say about it there. But so we'll get the connections from the crypt and the kill count, which I believe the kill count, just not to kill Will's bit. I believe it would be what I think we pinned 8 on him.
Oh.
And then there was the cop, or the cop shot the priest. So what, 9? Well, no, you got to count the parents too. So that's 10 and 11.
And the clerk, the first got shot by the Santa.
12. So yeah, I think unless we're missing one or miscounted there, we're looking at what, 12 or 13.
Got Billy. How about Billy? You counted Billy himself getting killed.
Yeah, true. Yeah, there you go. So that's probably about 13 or 14 then, give or take. So that sounds about right. And we'll get the official count from Will, since that's kind of his bit, and he'll get the number. But I'll go ahead and toss to the gore score with you.
Gore score.
All right, so this one is pretty juicy, especially the R-rated cut. Again, with the gore score being based on Chaz Valen's gore score back in the 80s and early 90s, he did do Silent Night, Deadly Night in his gore score, and he gave it a 5. Now, I don't know if that's based on the R-rated. I don't know if that had been based on when it came out in theater. But at any rate, I think it's more than a 5 for sure, at least in the uncut version. Like I said, I don't know if he saw that version back then. I would assume he did, though. But I'm going to diverge from Chaz's rating on this one and go up to bump it up to about a 7, I think. This has got some pretty intense. It's not super gory, where it's blood and guts flying everywhere, but the kills are bloody, especially in that unrated print. So, and they're frequent. So there's at least 13 or 14 somewhere in there for the body count. And most of them have pretty interesting kills. You had Linnea Quigley getting it with the deer antlers and showing them poking through and everything. That was pretty gory. And then you have her boyfriend getting thrown through the window and then with the glass shards in him. You have the box cutter cutting Pamela.
The hammer.
And you have the after effect. You get the hammer through the head of Mr. Sims, but you don't see it right then. You know, he hits him in the head with the hammer. I guess you see blood splatter on some boxes and some brain matter. It looks like.
The mom
And
getting
then you
raped.
later, a little bit, minute later, or so see the aftermath. Right, where he's sitting on the boxes with a hammer in the top of his head.
The mom getting raped and like her throat slit. You know, especially in that the newer cut or whatever. The spliced in cut. It's pretty rough.
Yeah. Then you have the axe in the stomach of the cop. Not that one too. That one's a go. You felt it though. Whenever he came back up those steps and he was up there, and then he gets to kind of like The Shining. When Jack Nicholson, swings the axe into Scatman Crothers' character right in the gut. You feel it, and then he goes down the stairs and you see the aftermath of the axe sticking out of the stomach.
Yeah.
And a lot of that. There's a lot, but I mean, it's not like super gory to where it would be a 10 or anything. So, but I'll pull it back to a 7. Again, that's divergent from Chaz gave it a 5, but I almost feel like that would be the R-rated cut. Probably you give it a 5 for the R-rated cut. But
yeah, you would have to imagine if he saw you would imagine if he's watching the same cut back then that we just watched, recently. You would think he would bump that up to a 6 or 7 for sure.
Yeah.
You just see more of it in that cut. So yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. All right, so that's all we've got for Silent Night, Deadly Night, and I'm sure we'll dip back into this series in the following years. But in 2 weeks, I guess I should mention next week, we'll be going back to the Spook Show Spotlight Well, and that will be our Holiday Horror Part 2 that will come out, episode 86, on December 13th. That is basically where we're just going to be talking about Christmas horror movies, since Part 1 was, all about Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, and New Year's horror flicks. We're going to be focusing on Christmas horror next week. So come back next Monday at 6 p.m. East for a deep dive into Christmas horror movies. Basically, we'll just kind of be skirting through all we can. And there's a lot more there for sure. So a lot to talk about there. So if you want to deep dive into just Christmas horror in general, that's for you next week. But the week after that, in 2 weeks, episode 87, will be a newer Christmas horror release. And this one was decided on in our November poll last month over on Patreon at patreon.com/AASpookshow. And don't forget, you can go over there right now and sign up and become a patron so you can vote on the December poll for a movie that we're going to be watching in January. So go check that out. And you can see all that on our socials and stuff. But the one that won last month will be The Ginger Dead Man from 2005. So I hope we can have Donnie and Will, all 4 of us can be there for this one, because holy shit, this movie is going to be plenty of fun to be had on this one. It stars Gary Busey, directed by Charles Band, so that's all you need to hear, right? Like, do I need to really read the synopsis? But I will anyways. An evil yet adorable gingerbread man comes to life with the soul of a convicted killer. This real-life cookie monster wreaks havoc on the girl who sent the killer to the electric chair. So I guess in a lot of ways it's a very similar premise to like Child's Play, right? Except a fucking gingerbread man. So
they took the movie Shocker and Child's Play and spat out gingerbread.
Yeah, and threw it in a blender and it came out as a gingerbread man. So
yeah.
The Ginger Dead Man from 2005 will be what we watch in 2 weeks. So lots of cool programming coming up. Like I said, the Spook Show Spotlight next week, Ginger Dead Man the week after that, and then our very last show of the year, our official last show of the year of 2021 will be episode 88, 2021 Year in Review. So where we'll be talking about all the movies, well, not all the movies, but a lot of the horror movies released in 2021. We'll kind of go down the list of here's some of the ones that I watched. Smoke, Donnie, Will, if whatever they've watched, I can guarantee they've probably watched far less than you and I have. But regardless, we'll talk about all we've watched, maybe some other stuff that we haven't watched, all in prep for, not only putting 2021 behind us, but getting ready for 2022. So that's what we got coming up here for the month of December. So lots going on. So be back with us, and hopefully we'll be somewhat getting back to normal with all 4 of us here on the program sooner or later. So it just keeps falling apart, to where all 4 of us can't be there at the same time. But either way, we keep bringing out the hits. So for Will and Donnie, who couldn't be with us, and for the Professor Smoke, I'm Josh. We are the All-American Spook Show Horror Podcast, and we will talk to you next week.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.